never changes. So here we go. 97 hours before Iowa chooses. In fact, the last two winners in this state are on this stage tonight. Governor Huckabee, in 2008, you won by 9 points here. But this time, your support seems to be going to Senator Ted Cruz and Donald Trump. Why, Governor, is your message not working this time?
I don't think it's that the message isn't working. I think it's the message isn't getting out. Because the message that I have this time, Bill, is exactly what I said 8 years ago. I talked about how people who are standing on their feet on factory floors, people who lift heavy things, who sweat through their clothes, they're getting gut punched. They are not having a fair shake in this economy. I talked about that 8 years ago, and I'm talking about it now. I talked about the importance of preserving life, of not just saying we're going to defund Planned Parenthood, but let's do something bolder. Let's get rid of abortion once and for all by applying the 5th and 14th Amendment to every person from conception, because that means that we recognize that no person can be deprived of life or liberty unless they have due process, and that's not happening in our country. And I believed and continued to practice that we need the fair tax to revive our economy, to make it so that people are able to be rewarded for their work rather than punished for it.
Governor, thank you. Senator Santorum, 4 short years ago, you won Iowa. You beat Mitt Romney. You pretty much shocked the country. But just the other day, you talked about doing what is in the greater good for your campaign. Is Monday night your last stand?
You know, listening to what your network was talking about prior to this race, this debate, reminded me of the coverage that many on this floor are getting. This debate was called the Undercard debate. The Undercard debate. It wasn't advertised significantly. In fact, the entire hour lead up to this, there was no conversation about any of the 4 people on this debate stage. And that is the chronic situation. In fact, they put a poll up from Wall Street Journal, NBC News, and they listed the candidates. And they failed to mention I wasn't listed. I got 0. Why? Because the NBC Wall Street Journal poll never includes my name on the list. This is what the media has been doing over the past year in trying to segregate and take Iowans out of the process. What Iowans deserve is to hear from every candidate on an equal footing. Had they applied the same rules 4 years ago, I would have been in the Undercard debate. The guy who won the Iowa caucuses would have been in the Undercard debate, not talked about. We would have been talking about maybe an entertainer that may have been trying to run. Ladies and gentlemen, you have a chance on Monday to put the record straight about who you want, not who will entertain you, okay, but who will fight for what you believe in, and I hope you do it.
Do you want to name, Senator, do you want to name that entertainer you're referring to?
Well, look, the entire lead up to this debate was talking about whether Donald Trump is going to show up for the next debate. The people of Iowa, who I know pretty darn well, care a lot about the issues. They care about who's going to be the leader of the free world, who's going to be able to take on ISIS and take on Iran and make sure that we're safe. They're concerned about whether their agriculture program, so their renewable fuel standard is going to be maintained. And we're not hearing any of those things. We're hearing about whether someone's going to show up for the next debate or not.
Quickly then, after this debate, you mentioned Donald Trump's name. Immediately you're going to an event across town here in Des Moines as a guest of Donald Trump. So,
yeah,
are you laying the groundwork for maybe your future, perhaps an endorsement of Mr. Trump?
You know, this again, more of the politics of trying to get people to throw stuff at each other. I'm not going to throw mud at anybody on this stage tonight. I'm not going to throw mud at anybody on the stage later. I'm not going to attack Donald Trump. What I'm going to say, Mike Huckabee and I were asked to come to an event where money was going to be raised to help our veterans. You know, I thought about it. I said, well, wait a minute. Now, if there were no political considerations, and I had some time because I'm not doing anything at 9 o'clock tonight. Well. And so if I had some time, would I go if I could help raise money for veterans? Well, and the answer was yes, I would, and so I'm going.
Well, Bill,
Thank you, Senator. One moment. We'll get to you in a moment, Governor. Right. We have a few coming up.
So it will come as no surprise that there's an idea out there that there's a civil war brewing within the GOP over the meaning of conservative and the question of who is electable. There are some in the GOP who are so outraged by Trump and Cruz that they say they would actually rather have Hillary Clinton in the White House. So, Carly Fiorina, I ask you this. Is your party in crisis?
You know, when I started my campaign on May 4th of last year, I was 17 out of 16 candidates. Nobody polled my name. Nobody had ever heard of me. Less than 4% of you had ever heard of me. And the people in Iowa showed up, and they're still showing up, hundreds and hundreds of them at every event. I've done over 150 events in the state of Iowa. I have 15 more coming up. Now, by the way, I start there because someone asked me about midway through my campaign, what's the biggest surprise to you on the campaign trail? And I'll tell you what the biggest surprise is. The chasm, the yawning chasm between what the national media talks about and what the people of Iowa and the people of this great nation talk about. That's the biggest surprise. So guess what, Martha? Guess what? Sorry, the people of Iowa never asked me about a crisis in the GOP. They never asked me about the polls. They never asked me about the other candidates. What they asked me about is, Carly, tell us why zero-based budgeting is so important. Tell us why you're a leader who's going to produce results. Tell us how you're going to defeat ISIS. Tell us how we're going to replace Obamacare. In other words, I'm going to put my faith every single time, not in the pundits, not in the polls, most definitely not in the national media. I'm going to put my faith in the common sense and the good judgment of the voters of Iowa. And last time I looked, you hadn't started voting yet. So on Monday night, I hope you'll stand with me, fight with me, caucus for me, because citizens, this is why we have to take our government back. The establishment thinks it owns this country. The pundits think they own this country. The media thinks they own this country. We were intended to be a citizen government. Citizens, the game is rigged. You have the power. Take our country back.
Thank you. Governor Gilmore.